This is the presentation to the Transportation Research Board annual meeting held on January 10th, 2024. From 2020 to 2022, coincident with the height of the pandemic and the succeeding months of the It's Best to Work from Home waves of COVID surges, we engaged with a major regional transit authority to help them reduce paper documents through digital scanning. A wide-ranging, multi-jurisdiction railway, bus, and paratransit system, the authority had undertaken this initiative to eliminate legacy paper records, to downsize their footprint while relocating 3,000 office-based employees that were spread across 10 aging buildings originally planned and configured nearly 50 years ago in the 1970s and 80s. The disparate facilities resulted in a fragmented workforce and also had deferred maintenance and safety issues. The authority was relocating most of these employees to 3 new office buildings. The goal of consolidating these employees to 3 regional buildings was to save money and also hopefully to break down the silos and encourage collaboration among departments and teams. The challenge is that the new facilities are smaller office spaces, and the spaces are configured for new ways of working, with office hoteling, hot desking, and privacy and collaboration areas. There will be limited space for personal materials such as paper files, engineering plans, and reference materials. To help plan for and prepare employees for the move to the new work environment, the authority hired change management consultants. Those consultants hired us to develop and execute the plan to more or less eliminate legacy paper records and reference materials. This involved developing the metadata strategy, doing the scanning, and building the repository that would become the system of record for legacy documents. But as the pandemic caused the authority to make an abrupt shift to remote work, the focus of this engagement transformed into helping a bureaucracy which had no culture of remote work be able to work remotely. Although for enterprise taxonomies, we normally use a top-down approach, in this project we were asked to adopt a bottom-up approach that would be executed iteratively, department by department. In this process, we surveyed each department or business unit, interviewed stakeholders in a departmental focus group, defined use cases, metadata, and vocabularies for each department, validated the taxonomy with the department against their use cases, and generated a metadata specification for each department. We applied best practices and guided departments toward emerging commonalities, but at the end of the day, each department got their own separate taxonomy. The type of documents that were held in the departments varied widely. Paper documents in file folders or binders, including drawings of any size, were in scope for the project. The agenda was primarily to discuss each type of document that was identified in the survey. The goal of the focus groups was to identify for each type of document the primary way or ways that the department organized the documents, the primary way or ways that the department searched for the documents, and the typical use cases related to the documents. Focus groups were conducted in person so that employees could show us examples of documents to help us understand their form and use. At the end of the focus group, we conducted a quick survey of the number of linear feet of materials to estimate the number of pages of documents for planning the scanning effort. Following the focus groups, we prepared detailed notes that were emailed to the participants for their review and correction. We used the focus group notes together with the document survey to prepare the first version of the taxonomy. The taxonomy identified the metadata attributes used by all document types in the department, the document types and metadata attributes for each type, any controlled vocabularies associated with metadata attributes, the proposed file naming convention based on concatenating metadata values into 3 file naming segments, at least one use case for each of the document types with the corresponding metadata that would fulfill each use case, and the taxonomy to be used in the validation activity. Following the focus group, we also prepared a presentation that summarized our preliminary assessment of the document types and our proposed metadata scheme for describing them, so that they could be retrieved in response to the identified use cases. This discovery report was reviewed with the department stakeholders in an online meeting. After the meeting, the stakeholders reviewed the report and provided corrections or approved it. Based on the approved department metadata scheme, an optimal workshop tree navigation exercise was configured for each use case. Once launched, the department stakeholders had a week to complete the validation activity via a web link. Then we prepared a validation report based on the optimal workshop self-scoring activity results and made any changes to the taxonomy that were warranted. The department would receive the validation report along with our final draft of the taxonomy. Finally, we prepared a full specification for how each departmental document type should be described with complete and consistent metadata. A QR code control sheet was generated for each document type that would trigger the appropriate metadata template so that technicians could generate the relevant metadata during the document scanning process. The specification also was designed to serve as a continuing specification so that future scanning or born digital documents could be appropriately tagged with the relevant metadata. The project ran for 2 years, from October 2020 to October 2022, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I personally ran most of the focus groups, masking up and taking transit, meeting in conference rooms at various facilities across the authority's area of coverage, including in buildings in the train yards at the end of the rail lines. The rest of the strategy team was from History Associates. National Office Systems, or NOS, ran the scanning and tagging operation, and the change management vendor was the clearing. We completed metadata strategies for 63 departments or business units from across the authority. This included business functions ranging from accounting and HR, to bus and rail operations, to the transit police and health and safety departments. We completed an average of 2.6 department metadata strategies each month. There was an average of 9.6 attributes per department. The only mandatory attributes were document type and business unit for every department. Aside from the mandatory attributes, the most common attributes are listed in the table on the right. They include several forms of date, last and first name, contract number, employee ID, title, and the line and station code, and vendor and manufacturers. In 2012, Google introduced their knowledge graph using the tagline, "Things, not strings." The key feature is that Google was now searching for named entities, that is, the names of people, organizations, locations, events, products, and so on, and returning curated web content explicitly related to these entities, rather than simply returning a list of web links as the search results. This required a predefined set of named entities, unique identifiers for them, and information that was explicitly related to them. This is a reorganized list of the most common attributes in the transit system document collection from the digitization project. We've grouped them by named entities and identifiers and indicated the linkages between them, that is, the identifiers that are associated with named entities. Since these named entities and identifiers have been associated with each document when it was scanned, in the digitization project, actual documents are already associated with these entities. So, for any given entity or combination of entities, we can provide search results of explicitly related documents related to things, not just those which happen to occur as a string in the text. This is a graph of the transit agency employee and policy entities and the relationships between them, indicated by arrows. Each named entity or thing, which is called a concept in this tool, has attributes associated with it. These attributes are things like identifiers, titles, and dates. For example, an instruction may have attributes such as instruction number, instruction title, and effective date. There may also be relationships between entities. These may be hierarchical, which are called specializations in this tool and have dotted arrows, or associative relationships called related in this tool, which have solid arrows. For example, an instruction is a specialization of a policy, which in turn is a specialization of a standard operating procedure. An SOP may apply to a position, which is the job of an employee. An employee is employed by a business unit. This is a graph of the transit agency contracts and vendors and the relationships between them. This graph resembles a business process model. The key difference is that the knowledge graph is about specifying named entities with attributes that facilitate the reliable retrieval of things, while the goal of the business process model is to specify a repeatable business process. This is a graph of the transit agency assets and the relationships between them. This graph focuses on buses and trains. Trains are composed of train cars. They have a destination and an origin, which is a rail yard. Rail yards serve one or more rail lines. Rail lines are made up of rail line segments, and segments are identified by train stops. For buses, it's similar. The buses have origins and destinations that are bus divisions. Those divisions include bus lines. Bus lines are composed of bus route segments, and the bus route segments are determined or identified or delimited by bus stops. Behind the scenes of these graphs is RDF, which is a serialized form of XML, and it's used to encode attributes and relationships for concepts or things in order to communicate them between systems. To enable this, every entity has a persistent identifier, and these identifiers are maintained as one or more namespaces. In this talk, we've provided a brief description of a project to digitize legacy paper records at a large transit agency. While the project generated separate metadata specifications for each business unit, an effort was made to guide the organization towards common practices where the same metadata attributes were used in multiple departments. In these cases, common naming conventions were applied as much as possible. At the end of the project, we created a concordance of all the metadata attributes. This master list was used to generate examples of graphs that could be globally applied at the transit agency for employees and policies, vendors and contracts, and transportation assets. The difference between a knowledge graph and a business process model is that the goal of a business process model is to specify a repeatable business process, while a knowledge graph is about specifying named entities with attributes that facilitate the reliable retrieval of things. I'm Joseph Busch, the Principal Consultant at Taxonomy Strategies. It's been a pleasure to tell you about this project, and please let me know if you have any questions.